change, and I can't wait to see what you all accomplish together. New century, new generation, new mission to the moon and beyond. Godspeed, Artemis team and Artemis 1.
I think it's so great that we know she's following along and interested in this mission too.
Yeah, it's so awesome to see the women who have come before us at NASA and paved the way for a much more diverse team to contribute to these amazing missions.
Yeah, and speaking of women breaking the mold, before serving as a NASA astronaut, I know you were a naval officer and a member of the first class of women commissioned to the submarine community. How amazing is that? I mean, what would you say as you look at these pictures? What would you say to women, young girls who might be thinking, hey, I might want to join a predominantly male field?
Yeah, I was just really lucky to be in the right place at the right time. I was a senior at the Naval Academy when they announced that they were going to change the policy and allow us to serve aboard submarines. But even before that change happened, I knew that I was passionate about serving in that role and I was dreaming about it. So I think allowing yourself to really examine what your passions are and be brave enough to dream that you could actually do those things. I had awesome mentors who encouraged me along the way and told me never close a door on yourself. You always want to put yourself in the roles you're most passionate about, especially if you're going to challenge yourself. Doing something you love that's hard is so much better than doing something that you're not as well suited to. So I was just lucky I had some awesome leaders in my life who encouraged me to be brave enough to dream so that when those opportunities presented themselves, I was ready to take them on.
Yeah, no, that's great. Having mentors is always so important because, sometimes you don't know what path to take, especially if you're blazing your own. So it's always so nice to have somebody to talk through some of that.
Absolutely.
52 minutes until the opening of the 2-hour window for Artemis 1 today. Once it soars off the launch pad, our colleagues over in Houston will take over. Leah, how are things looking in mission control right now?
Hey, Megan, I'm here now, and thanks for joining us again here in the White Flight Control Room here at NASA's Johnson Space Center. So you might be wondering why Johnson Space Center will control the flight of Orion after liftoff, even though it's launching at Kennedy Space Center, and that's all about how our flight control centers are designed. Launch control is at Kennedy, while mission control is in Houston, and we also have the SLS Engineering Support Center at NASA's Marshall Space Flight Center. Ever since the Gemini 4 mission in 1965, all flights have been commanded from Houston after launch, so we have the infrastructure and the experience here at Johnson Space Center to work through long-duration missions with, or in this case, without crew. Additionally, launches must be conducted over water rather than over populated areas, which makes Kennedy Space Center a prime location. Again, we're ready to jump into action once SLS takes flight, and this room will be staffed around the clock until Orion splashes down at the end of the mission. We're excited to continue that work today with Artemis 1 and throughout the Artemis program, but for now, we'll turn it back over to you, Megan and Kayla.
Now, the fully stacked SLS and Orion system was rolled from the vehicle assembly building to the launch pad about 2 weeks ago. We captured this video of the 4-mile, 9-hour journey. It took a special transporter and a special team of people to make it happen. Hear from them what it's like to shoulder the weight of this moment.
The crawler transporter is a machine that goes and picks up the mobile launcher, the SLS rocket with Orion. It's basically the cornerstone of the mobile launch concept. Without the crawler, you couldn't transport the mobile launcher and the vehicle from the VAB to the pad or the pad back to the VAB. And it was designed and built for the Apollo program to move Saturn V's to the launch pad. Since then, we've modified it and used it to move the entire shuttle program. And after the shuttle program, we did extensive modifications, and now it's to be used to move Artemis to the launch pad. The crawler is 136 feet long from end to end. It's 114 feet wide from the edge of the truck to the other edge of the truck. It weighs 6.6 million pounds. It has the power to do 2 miles an hour, but you never want to go that fast. Generally, we're around 0.83 for SLS. Artemis will be one of the heaviest loads we've ever carried and one of the tallest loads we've carried. I am exceptionally proud of our team. They're very talented, they're very committed, and they're just all around good team. I think any problem that crops up or anything that comes up, we'll fix it and we'll get moving again. And again, it starts right here with the crawler. So if we do our job and everybody else does theirs, then we're going to have a successful launch. We're going back to the moon. This is going to be just fantastic.
Such an impressive team. And the crawler, Kayla, I mean, this is a certificate from the Guinness Book of World Records.
Yeah, it's pretty cool getting recognized for the heaviest self-powered vehicle in the world at 3,106 tons.
That's amazing.
It's amazing.
I know. We were just talking about how awesome the crawler is. I mean, it was retrofitted. It was created in the Apollo for the Apollo missions, and it was updated, modified for shuttle, and now it's been modified for Artemis. It's just really an amazing machine, and the people who keep it maintained and operate it. Like, I'm so glad that we could feature them today.
Absolutely.
All right, so we are 48 minutes and counting, again, from that opening of the 2-hour window we have today. Kayla, if you thought you were excited, you have got to check out this video here.
This is really cool. We got some children that are on a bus, and they're going to come here to the vehicle assembly building, and the administrator and I are going to jump on the bus and surprise them.
We're going to give them the opportunity to come in and go up the elevator with the rocket.
Wow! This is so cool! Look at that thing! Whoa, that's awesome!
Hey guys, would you like to see a moon rocket?
Yeah!
Because it is the future of our country, indeed the future of the world. And we saw what our space program does for science and technology and engineering and mathematics. We saw that in the Apollo generation.
All right, guys, what do you think? What I hope to achieve today is inspiring a new generation. I mean, the more people that we can get to see up close and personal this rocket, it's awe-inspiring. And I cannot wait till the launch. When America sees our rocket actually launch on a test flight to the moon, you know, it's just going to spark a whole new push for what we are doing.
Best day of my whole life ever. It's gonna be incredible. It was a dream come true.
This rocket is definitely going to the moon.
I think it's really amazing.
I was actually really excited because I've never seen a rocket like this close up.
Now we have the Artemis generation. This is a new generation of us going back to the moon to learn and live, and then we're going to Mars.
I told you they were so excited. They're so cute. Their faces. It was amazing.
I think my face looked pretty similar the first time I walked into the VAB and looked up at that rocket. I mean, the building is huge, and standing at the base of the rocket just takes your breath away. The scale of it, 322 feet, especially stacked on its end like that, is just amazing. So yeah. I almost relived my first time in the VAB through their eyes.
And it was really cool. There was this opportunity where they got to just ask any questions they wanted. I was there, so they were asking me questions. They were asking the administrator, Bob Cabana as well, and they just hands shot up. They just had questions, and then sometimes I didn't really know the answer, and they're like, well, it's this, and I was like, oh my God, they know so much, and they're so interested in it. I mean, again, this is why we're doing this. This is part of the inspiring the next generation.
Absolutely. Whenever I get a chance to interact with kids kind of any age, all the way from elementary school up through college, the human spaceflight program, and Artemis in particular, I think really captures people's imagination and gets them interested in everything it takes to do something so daring and so complicated.
Yeah. And actually, before we move on, an interesting note about the opening music in that video, it's an original composition called The Artemis Generation, performed by the Cooper Middle School Band percussion section of McLean, Virginia. And to continue to inspire the Artemis generation, NASA invited students to take part in a national essay contest, challenging them to imagine what it'd be like to lead a week-long mission to the moon's South Pole. Here's the first winner now.
I gazed out of our moon pod window just before it was time to exit. My crew of 3 and I had been working for years to get here. Our crew consisted of a botanist, an engineer, a doctor, and me, an astrobiologist. We'd been picked because of how well we got along together, with our complementary STEM backgrounds and our naturally upbeat personalities. Houston, this is Artemis Crew 1, initiating airlock sequence, I said over my microphone. I looked at my crewmates, and as I stepped over the pod, I felt so gratified, becoming the first woman on the moon. Our purpose was to set up a moon habitat containing the 4 things needed to keep a crew safe: oxygen and clean water, a waste disposal system, the veggie project for food, and a protective outside shell made of regolith and mycelium. We will build it over the next week, and it will be used by other astronauts for years to come. Embarking on this incredible adventure, I couldn't help but be grateful to be given this opportunity to lead the most remarkable crew, and to know that I was a part of the Artemis generation.
So that was beautifully written by Taya Sauer of Laguna, California. And she was one of 3 essay winners. The 2 others were Austin Pritz of Walcott, Indiana, and Amanda Gutierrez of Lincoln, Nebraska. If you want to check out their essays, you can scan the QR code you see on the screen. The 3 of them beat out nearly 14,000 students who submitted essays. So you definitely want to check out the other 2, again, by scanning this QR code. So right now you're looking live at right outside of Kennedy Space Center's visitor complex. We have plenty of bleachers set out to accommodate, as you can see, a lot of guests that are hoping to see the launch today. So why don't we go in there and check back in with NASA's Leo Martin.
Hi, Megan. Yeah, this place is filling up. You can feel the excitement, people chattering, people sharing stories, people talking. And, we just heard about those Artemis Moonpod essay winners who are part of the Artemis generation. Also joining me tonight from the Artemis generation, we have 2 students who were actually able to come down and visit at Kennedy Space Center to watch this launch live tonight. I'm joined here by Denham and Allison. How does it feel to be here tonight?
Really, when I first found out, I was really nervous. I didn't really know what to expect. Like, we really just looked at each other and we kind of screamed.
Yeah. Just out of excitement?
Yeah.
How did you feel?
Honestly, it was amazing. It was surreal. That we have this opportunity out of so many people who applied for this. It was outstanding.
And you guys actually got to take a tour of Kennedy Space Center a little bit earlier this week. What was something that you got to see that was just really outstanding?
I think it was the shuttle experience, how it is when the rocket ship goes up with people in it. It was honestly really fun doing it and learning how they feel at the moment.
And Denham, what do you think it will be like to watch the world's most powerful rocket launch tonight from just across the river?
Well, really, I don't really know what to expect because I've never really done this before, but I feel like it would really be outstanding. I might shed a little tear, but I don't really know. I'm really excited to be here, and it's amazing.
It is amazing, and I don't think you're going to be the only one shedding tears tonight. Megan, we're super excited, eyes on Artemis, and we're ready to see the launch.
Thanks so much, guys. Now, Kayla, are you ready for more questions from social media? We're getting them in.
Always.
All right, let's take a look at the screen now. We have another celebrity question.
Hey, I'm Kiki Palmer, and I play Izzy Hawthorne in Pixar's Lightyear, and I can't wait to see Artemis 1 launch today. How will going back to the moon pave the way to Mars?
Thank you, Kiki.
Yeah, what an awesome question for tonight. I mean, the return to the moon is going to give us a chance to test all of the capabilities we need to operate on Mars. Mars is really far from home. It's going to take us 6 months just to get there, and that's with ideal planetary alignment and expected advances in propulsion technology. Then we'll spend about a year plus on the surface before it's 6 months home. And so the moon is a lot closer. We can get there in 3 days. The communications delay is a lot shorter, and so we can really test our operational concepts a lot closer to home. The moon's super far away. It's 250,000 miles, but that's way closer than Mars. So it's going to give us a chance to test all of our technologies so that we know what we need to develop in order to take that next step.
Yeah, we call it the next giant step for a reason. Mars is very, very far, like you said. All right, let's take another question from social media. Kayla, what inspired you to be an astronaut?
My journey was a little bit different than some of my colleagues. I didn't grow up specifically dreaming of becoming an astronaut. I don't know what the barrier was there. I was aware of and inspired by the space program, but I never allowed myself to dream of becoming an astronaut until I had served on a submarine, actually. I think that operational experience that's so similar to what we do in the space program, if you think about it, we're sending humans to live, work, and do something of importance in a place where people aren't supposed to be, the depths of the ocean or the vacuum of space. And so I think those experiences gave me the confidence to even dream that I could become an astronaut, and then inspired me to apply in the first place.
And that doesn't deter you, again, like being in a place where, we're not supposed to be, a confined space at that.
Yeah, I think those parallels, I got a chance to meet an astronaut after serving on my submarine, Kay Heyer, who's also a Naval Academy graduate, class of 1981. And hearing about her experiences working on the space station really made me click. All of a sudden I said, the space station's a submarine in space.
Yes.
And it sounds silly, but I had never made that connection before. And once I did, I just couldn't stop dreaming about it.
Oh, that's so cool. I love that your story isn't, the typical one, as you said. Okay, I think we have time for one more question. Is Snoopy ready and excited?
Of course. I think like any crew member, Snoopy's been training for this moment. He knows what to expect in a nominal and an off-nominal launch and all the actions expected of him. So like any good crew member, he's ready to go.
And he has a suit that's been tailored to him. It's especially made for him, the way that the astronaut suits are especially made for them. So yeah, I think he's ready.
Yeah. Seeing the moon up close, he's ready to go.
So keep those questions coming. Use that hashtag Artemis and tweet or drop them in the comments wherever you're watching this broadcast. And don't forget those NASA Moon Snaps. Hashtag NASA Moon Snap for your moon-inspired content. Okay, we are now 37 minutes from the opening of our 2-hour launch window today. Let's check back in with Daryl with the launch team.
Yeah, we've had a couple of issues that the launch team has been working, and we have an update on both of those. First of all, is the leak, the liquid hydrogen leak in the replenish valve out at the mobile launcher. We understand from the launch team that leak has not recurred. The work that happened out at the pad is that the Red Crew and the work that they did out there remedied the leak. That's good news. And now the liquid hydrogen tank on the core stage is back in replenish at this moment. And the upper stage of the rocket, liquid hydrogen side, is in fast fill. You can see from the graphic there that we are back up to 100% over on the liquid hydrogen side on the right hand of the screen. On the left hand of the screen, you can see we have been in stable replenish for liquid oxygen. Now, with regards to the range, they reported that they had an issue to the NASA test director with their radar sight. Later found out that was actually a bad Ethernet switch that was cutting out and not providing them the data. The range reported that they will swap out that bad switch, and they're currently working on that. They advised at the time, about a half hour ago, that it would take them about 70 minutes, or about 25 minutes into that work. They did just recently update the NASA test director to say that it's going to take them a little bit longer because they're going to need to re-verify this Ethernet equipment once they have it installed. Again, that work is ongoing, but at the moment, if we were launching right now, the range is no-go as a result of that bad Ethernet switch. The Dolly Loop file, which helps steer the Space Launch System through the upper atmosphere, has been uploaded to the rocket, and so we're good to go there in terms of other configurations that are ongoing. But we are continuing to monitor communications of the launch team about holding to the top of the window, currently slated for 1:04 a.m. Eastern Time. But we do have 2 hours, and we have yet to see whether or not the launch team is going to be able to make enough adjustments in order to hit the top of that window. No slip yet, but we're monitoring their work, and we'll give you an update when we have it. Back to you, Megan.
Thank you, Daryl. Really great news about that leak. Kayla and I actually said, wow, that's really great news. So we'll wait on your next update. Let's go back live now to Kennedy Space Center's visitor complex, where we have NASA's Dan Hewitt inside there with our new moon board. Dan, let's focus in on Orion now. It has three main elements, right?
That's right, Megan. And Orion is the spacecraft that's going to be carrying our Artemis astronauts off of planet Earth and then returning them home. As you said, three major components, so we'll jump in here at the top with the first one, the launch abort system. This is a critical safety feature on Orion, designed to pull the capsule away from the SLS stack in the event of an emergency on the pad or the way uphill. And it does that using three solid rocket motors. The first one, the abort motor, can fire within milliseconds of automatically detecting an issue, pulling the capsule away to a safe distance. After that, the attitude adjustment motor. This one will fire. We can cancel out any rates, put us into a nice stable glide before we get ready to fire the jettison motor. This is the one that will actually take the launch abort system off of Orion, allowing it to then deploy parachutes and parachute down to safety. I will note the jettison motor, the only one that fires no matter what on a normal mission. It's going to fire once we're high enough in the atmosphere. And for Artemis 1, that is the only motor on this that is active. The attitude and abort motors are inert for Artemis 1. And that's all focused on protecting this, the Orion crew module. This is where you have your astronauts physically inside. In the capsule, you have everything you need to keep a crew safe, happy, healthy, thriving in deep space. You have a pressurized environment, seats, crew displays, toilet, everything that you need. On the outside, couple of critical features. On the bottom, the heat shield. Remember, this is goal number one for this mission, is testing that heat shield. It's an ablative structure made to survive that fiery re-entry at the end of a mission. Along the outside, you see these small gray circles. Those are reaction control system thrusters. Orion can use that at the very end to control the yaw, pitch, and roll as it's hurtling through the atmosphere. We have windows. You need windows to look outside. 2 on the front, 2 on the sides, 1 in the side hatch, 1 up top in the very top docking hatch. Those are different layers of glass and acrylics for pressure and thermal control. We have a docking system, an uprighting system, parachutes, all for the very end of the mission. Third and final piece, down here at the bottom, the European Service Module. This has all of the propulsion assets for after SLS has done its job. Starting on the bottom, the large orbital maneuvering system engine. This is the one that's providing the most thrust for all of those key maneuvers around the moon. 8 auxiliary thrusters also around the aft to the bottom part of the service module to provide some additional push as well. And then 24 of these smaller reaction control system thrusters. They can be used for attitude control, which way you're pointing, as well as small translational maneuvers moving side to side. We flip the vehicle up, we see 4 solar arrays, each one 24 feet in length, altogether generating 11 kilowatts of electrical power for Orion systems. Inside the service module, you have tanks for things like the thermal control system, potable water when we have a crew on board, and also pressurized oxygen and nitrogen for an atmosphere, which gets fed through this umbilical here to the crew module, along with electrical lines. That's also what's going to separate us at the very end of the mission. So that's Orion. It's going to be making its first flight around the moon on Artemis 1. Can't wait to see it, taking those selfies around our lunar neighbor. Send it back over to you, Megan.
Thanks, Dan. That last component Dan talked about, the European Service Module provided by the European Space Agency. Let's go to Jasmine for that.
Thank you, Megan. We are back in Firing Room 2 with the Launch Control Center, and joining us now is Philippe Delou, ESA's Program Manager for the Orion European Service Module. You have quite the title there, a big title for a big job, I'm sure. We are very glad to have you here, and we understand that the European Service Module is powering Orion that's going to send humanity farther than ever before. Philippe, how is it getting us there?
Yeah, thank you. Good evening, everyone. So, yes, the service module accommodates the propulsion system that contains, among the tanks and the pressurization of the system, the engine, all the engines, 33 engines in total, among which the main engine, which is going to perform the burns to put Orion into the moon orbit and then back on the trajectory to return to Earth. The other engines are used for attitude correction during, attitude control and trajectory correction during the travel to the moon. In addition to the propulsion system, the service module generates the power and distributes the electricity to the crew module and the service module equipment so that they can operate. And the function is the thermal control of the system. The service module accommodates radiators to reject the heat that is produced by all the equipment and the crew that will eventually be in the Orion. Finally, not on Artemis 1, but on future Artemis mission, it will have tanks to store the crew consumable, the water, the oxygen, and the nitrogen.
Right. So we understand, too, that you are monitoring launch here in Firing Room 2 with us. And you also have a team. We're going to bring up a picture of that team right now, or a live look inside ESA's control room in the Netherlands. So can you tell us, what is your team working on today?
Yes. Well, the ESA team is not only back in the Netherlands. It's one aspect, but we have also a significant team in the control room in Johnson, in the MER control room. And their role is to monitor the telemetry from the service module to make sure that all parameters are within their nominal behavior, that the operations are performed also nominally, and for sure identify if something goes wrong, if something goes not nominal. And if something non-nominal is identified, then they will have the role to support the NASA team to troubleshoot the anomaly and prepare the recommendation to be brought to the mission management team for a decision on how to operate the vehicle forward.
Great. We're really glad to hear that your teams are monitoring here, Johnson in the Netherlands as well. And this has been a huge collaboration. There were 10 countries that contributed to the European service module. Can you tell me about that teamwork?
Indeed, it was a real teamwork of about 60 companies across 10 European countries. Together with the prime contractor, we have selected the finest companies available in Europe to build a state-of-the-art equipment which is needed to go back to the moon with humans.
Right, we're going back to the moon and farther even beyond. Thank you so much, Philippe. I really appreciate you being here tonight.
You're welcome. Thank you very much.
Of course, of course. Megan, back to you.
Now it's time to check back in with Mission Control in Houston. Leah, how are things over there?
Things are good over here at Johnson Space Center, which is just one part of an agency-wide effort with many NASA programs doing their part to make future missions a reality. When the first woman and first person of color travel to the moon, they'll be wearing a state-of-the-art launch and entry spacesuit called the Orion Crew Survival System. When they set foot on the moon, they'll be in another all-new next-gen suit, both being developed at the Johnson Space Center and through partnerships with commercial providers. During those spacewalks, astronauts will collect samples for further study of the moon. The Astromaterials Research and Exploration Science Division at JSC is preparing to receive rocks, soil, and ice collected from the moon's south pole, which has a unique crater impact history and ice deposits that have never been sampled. And leading the effort to advance capabilities for science, exploration, and commercial development of the moon is the Commercial Lunar Payload Services Initiative, or CLPS. More than a dozen American companies are developing science investigations and tech demos. Additionally, we need a sustainable presence, a specific station in orbit to facilitate continuous lunar access and serve as a home base or a jumping off point for new deep space exploration missions. This is where Gateway comes in. It's a multi-purpose lunar space station being developed by a worldwide effort led out of JSC. NASA is again teaming up with international and commercial partners to create this essential component. Artemis and Gateway will enable NASA's Human Research Program to better understand how the human body adapts beyond low Earth orbit, ensuring future astronauts traveling to the moon and Mars have the tools to keep healthy and thrive in new environments. And with that, we're going to turn it back over to Megan and Kayla at Kennedy.
Thank you so much. So Artemis will also facilitate new discoveries about the moon. So to tell us what we're hoping to learn, we have Sarah Noble here. She's the Artemis Lunar Science Lead. Great to have you here.
Thanks.
So tell us about what we know about the moon.
Yeah, so we learned a ton about the moon during Apollo, right, from the samples and the data that we collected. In fact, we're still learning from those samples and data even today, 50 years later. But then since Apollo, we've actually been studying the moon mostly from above, learning about getting more of a global perspective on the moon that we really didn't have during Apollo. And so that's allowed us to ask a lot better questions and to understand where to go to find the answers to them.
Now that we're headed back to the moon, sending human beings as part of the Artemis program, what are we hoping to learn that's new?
Yeah, so we're going to an entirely different part of the moon for Artemis, right? During Apollo, we kind of landed almost in the same place, like 6 times, right? In the sort of central near side of the moon. But for Artemis, we're going to go explore a new part of the moon. We're going to go to the South Pole, which is some of the oldest rocks on the moon. It's the part of the original crust of the moon. And there's places there that are permanently shadowed, where we think that water and other molecules sort of get trapped, and we really want to understand what those are, and so that we can use them for both science and for as a resource.
Sarah, we're also planning to land a rover at the South Pole of the Moon in late 2024. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, absolutely. The Viper rover, the Volatiles Investigating Polar Exploration Rover, is going to go land near the South Pole, and it's actually going to explore some of these permanently shadowed areas. It's going to dip into them, drill down, try to find out what that water is, what else is there, what form that water is, how much is there, so that we can really understand it both from a science perspective, and if we want to use it as a resource, we will understand how to extract it.
So some people might say, we have all these rovers, we have access to machines that can do a lot of the work on the surface of the moon for us, so why is it important to return humans to the moon?
Yeah, it's not an either-or proposition, right? There are some things that robots are better at and some things that humans are better at. And it turns out that humans are much better field geologists. We're really much more efficient and better at that. Plus, we can do better. We can deploy more complicated instruments, and we can use tools in ways that it's very difficult for robots to do, so we can collect better samples. And one of the great things is that we can bring back a lot of samples, right? When we do robotic sample return, it's usually a very small amount. But if you look at what we brought back from Apollo, it's a large amount of samples that literally hundreds, probably maybe thousands of scientists have been able to study over the years and over generations. And that's a lot of brain power to put behind those samples.
So again, that's how Artemis and Apollo are different. Now we're utilizing machines and people.
That's right.
To hopefully
together.
Advance. Yeah.
That's right.
Perfect. Sarah, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for having me.
So in honor of our destination, the moon, we asked you all to create moon-inspired content and share them with us using the hashtag NASA MoonSnap. We got so many wonderful submissions, so why don't we check them out now? That was a really cool look at all the different kinds of creations, recipes, and also art, and it was great to see what people submitted.
Yeah, it's awesome to see the creativity out there and how people are engaging with this mission in so many different ways.
Yeah. So I know that you didn't submit it yet, but you did create a moon snap, so to say. So why don't we take a look at that picture?
Yeah, this is one of my favorite pictures of the moon that I was able to take from orbit. I think for me, it kind of reminds me of that iconic picture of moonrise or Earthrise from the moon from Apollo. And it's kind of that in reverse. I think there's something about seeing the moon from orbit around the Earth that makes it seem a little bit easier to imagine what it'd be like to have that view from the moon looking back at our home planet.
Yeah, you should definitely submit that because that's an amazing photo. Did you take that yourself?
Yeah, out of the cupola window aboard the space station.
Wow, the resolution's great.
The cameras we have up there are incredible.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
So I haven't taken a moon snap, so I had nothing to submit. So how do you feel about creating a moon snap with me?
Let's do it.
All right, well, take that, if you don't mind lifting it up, and we're just going to snap a photo here. Oh, lighting. Perfect. So I just created a moon snap. I love it. I'm going to share it. And again, this is just to encourage people to really get involved in this mission. So we will continue to collect and share those photos. So again, if you have a NASA moon snap, just use that hashtag. Okay, Artemis 1 comes amid a very busy year and exciting year at NASA. Some of the highlights include 2 more commercial crew launches with SpaceX, Crew 4 in April, and then Crew 5 last month. In May, NASA and Boeing flew OFT-2, the second uncrewed flight test of the Starliner capsule. The goal is to certify the capsule for regular flights to the International Space Station after a crewed flight test next year. In July, we released the first images captured by our James Webb Telescope, and oh my, those are really beautiful, fascinating photos, and they're going to really help us answer some of astronomy's biggest questions about how our universe began. And then in September, we intentionally slammed the DART spacecraft into asteroid Dimorphos. Boom, look at that. And we successfully changed its course. The asteroid wasn't headed for Earth, but the test was to show we could defend our planet if needed. And recently, 2 other missions that benefit the Artemis program. Last week, we tested a new inflatable heat shield that could help us eventually land humans on Mars. And just 2 days ago, Capstone arrived at its intended orbit around the moon. The small satellite launched from New Zealand in June and will now test a unique lunar orbit for a future space station there.
Artemis 1 heralds a new era in the history of human spaceflight. It marks a pivotal next step in humanity's return to the moon, ushering in a new generation of astronauts, technology, and research. This critical flight test sets the course for a bright future at the moon. It represents our ability to safely send Artemis astronauts and critical hardware to lunar orbit. Humanity will experience Artemis in different ways than we did Apollo. We will explore new areas of the moon with 21st century materials, technologies, systems, and operations. Gateway will be humanity's first space station to orbit the moon, built with next-generation technology. Gateway will not only provide a deep space outpost for future lunar expeditions, it will also serve as a station for landers, experiments, and supplies. Starting with the core power and habitation elements, Gateway will grow with increasing capability as international partners contribute new habitat and refueling modules, observation windows, external robotics, and more. Gateway will enable longer stays and more science to be conducted on and around the moon than ever before. And one day, it will help set the stage for missions to Mars. A highly skilled, diverse core of astronauts will be selected for Artemis missions, including the first woman and first person of color to step foot on the moon. Aboard Gateway, the crew will conduct exciting research from their unique deep space vantage point. Gateway will also be a transfer station for astronauts to board innovative human landing systems that will ferry them to and from the lunar surface for exciting scientific expeditions near the South Pole. Once on the moon, Artemis astronauts will use expertise in fields like biology and geology to conduct groundbreaking research in modern spacesuits using advanced tools. They will drive new rovers to investigate the lunar terrain and unlock some of the greatest mysteries of our solar system. Artemis 1 cements our capability to send astronauts and cargo to the moon for years to come. We're going back to the moon. We are Artemis.
As we approach the opening of our 2-hour launch window, we have a special musical performance for you. America the Beautiful, played in honor of the flight test by the Philadelphia Orchestra and Yo-Yo Ma. truly beautiful performance. It really has me feeling quite emotional right now.
Yeah, perfect tribute for tonight's launch.
You know, it's just, it gives me a sense of pride, really, to just remember that our country continues to lead our nation in space exploration. So, and as such, the White House is closely watching this historic launch. Earlier this year, Vice President Kamala Harris came down to Kennedy Space Center and met with NASA leadership as well as astronauts. She also toured our facilities where teams are working on hardware for future Artemis missions. Before leaving, she signed a piece of the Orion spacecraft that will fly on Artemis 3. She's doing it right there, which will return astronauts to the lunar surface. Okay, Kayla, time for more social questions. So let's take the first one. You know now the drill. It's going to be a celebrity question, so let's take that.
Hey guys, I'm Jack Black, and I'm super excited for the Artemis 1 launch today. I was part of a little movie called Apollo 10.5, A Space-Age Childhood, and I have a few burning queries. Question the first. How is Artemis different than Apollo?
Artemis is different than Apollo because we're returning to the moon, but this time we're going to stay. So rather than a short visit where we can do some amazing science, but it was pretty limited by these short visits, kind of a small area of the moon, we're going to the South Pole and we're going to learn how to live there long term. So we're going to be building habitats, we're going to have rovers, we're going to have all of this infrastructure on the moon supporting scientific discovery, but also that next big step to Mars.
I love seeing celebrities also take part and ask questions because it really shows that this is something that's captivating a lot of people. So that was really fun to see Jack Black. Also, query the first. That was funny. All right, let's go to the second question. How does it feel in space?
Being in space is amazing. I mean, for us launching to orbit around the Earth and then go to the space station where I just was for 6 months, we're in an apparent microgravity environment. So for us, it feels like we're weightless, like we're floating. So you have to relearn how to live and work in that space. But once you get used to it, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, we were just talking, Jessica Watkins, another NASA astronaut, was just here. And she was saying that actually when you came back on Earth, that was an adjustment as well because you got so used to living on the space station.
Yeah, the transition home was actually a lot harder for me than the transition up there because our vestibular systems kind of remap. We start ignoring all the sensors in our inner ear that tell us how our bodies are moving because the space environment is so strange. But we really need that on Earth to balance and control our bodies.
Sure.
So when we get back, it takes a couple of days before we feel comfortable again.
Really interesting. Thanks so much for those. Okay, so we are 10 minutes until the opening of our 2-hour launch window today. So why don't we head back over to Daryl. Daryl, tell us what's happening now.
Yeah, Megan, we actually have about 10 minutes before we go into a half-hour hold. That half-hour hold is part of the L clock, and what you see on your monitor right now, I believe, is the T clock. So in about 10 minutes, we'll hold for a half hour, and currently the launch team is trying to evaluate how much of a delay may result from some issues that we've been facing over the past hour. Just to recap those, we had a leak in a replenish valve on the mobile launcher that feeds into the liquid hydrogen core stage tank. That's been resolved. The leak has been fixed, and we're moving forward. Currently, the upper stage of the rocket for liquid hydrogen is roughly 78% at the moment. So that is tracking. Progress continues there. The core stage has been topped off, and now both liquid oxygen and liquid hydrogen are 100%, along with the upper stage of the liquid hydrogen side of the equation. So we're just waiting on the complete tanking of the upper stage liquid hydrogen. Now, with regards to the range issue that we had, we just got an update from the range, the 45th Space Wing officer reporting in to the NASA test director that the Ethernet switch has been replaced. This problematic switch took down their ability to see radar from one of their assets, which is key in getting acquisition and signal for the flight termination system if it were to be needed. Of course, this is a critical system that has to be tested before we can launch. So at the moment, we're looking still at a 1:04 a.m. Eastern Time launch. But it is pretty clear from the work that is